This meeting of the Board of Ed for September 13th, 2018 for the Hyde Park Central School District is called to order at 5:30. Can I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss confidential matters pertaining to confidential employment matters and unit negotiations?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. We're in executive session. Okay. So we're returning back to regular session. Can I have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's one agenda modification. We'll be moving the North Park Elementary update to 7.3, and we're moving the DC BOCES capital project to 7.2. We're going to switch those two around. Can I have a motion to adopt this modification to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Carried away.
Clear, thank you.
Okay, upcoming events.
Adopted agenda first.
Oh, sorry. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Okay, upcoming events. Wednesday on September 19th, there will be no school. September 27th will be the next regular Board of Education meeting. And that will be here at the district office. Now on to Pride. Patrick?
Yes. Okay. So starting with the elementary schools, this week students at North Park were creating getting to know you sculptures and paintings in the art room. It was a great way to start the new year, and the art room also has a growth mindset box. When students who think creatively when making a mistake and help their peers, they will get their name submitted to the box, and at the end of each month, oh, sorry.
I got a high sign from
Miss Busser, the art teacher, she'll pick a few names out for a prize. So now at FDR, National Honor Society, we decorated the freshman lockers to welcome them on their first day at FDR. Senior Alexia Sanchez was recently selected from New York State to perform as part of the National Honors Choir. She was the only girl selected from New York State. She scored a perfect score at NYSSMA and represented FDR at the NYSSMA All-State. Senior Eden Palmer, her artwork was selected as District 19's winner for the Congressional Art Competition last year. She had an all-expenses paid trip to D.C., and her art was hung in the Capitol Building. Her and other recipients received a private tour of the Capitol Building, and she also earned a scholarship at one of her top colleges as a result of winning this. Seniors Leela Raines, Kara Brainerd, and Amelia McNamara, they all earned all-state honors in flute, French, horn, and trumpet. This is the most FDR students to receive all-state honors at the same time. FDR school psychologist Mr. Hurley received the award for excellence in pupil services from the Mid-Hudson School Study Council. Mr. Zachowski, who was identified by Governor Cuomo last year as one of New York State's newest master teachers, was selected by New York State to participate in development of computer science standards. And since the beginning of school and up until the 28th, we at SGO have been working for pep rally and homecoming. There's a lot to do with that. We've been planning a lot. We've added some new things. And now at sports, FDR earned the New York State Public High School Athletic Association School of Excellence Award. It's given to schools with 75% of the varsity teams earning the Scholar Athlete Award. 22 out of 25 teams earned the award, so that's pretty good. For cross country, boys placed second at the Warwick Invitational, girls placed 8th, and Sarah Trainer placed second with a time of 18:01. Volleyball is off to a 2-0 start this season. Girls soccer earned their first win against Marlborough, and tonight, boys soccer, we beat Wallkill, our rivals, for the first time in 7 years, so it's pretty good. And that's it.
Congratulations.
Is there any other part?
I just wanted to mention, in addition to Dan Hurley receiving the Mid-Hudson School Study Council, another category that they have is recognizing excellence in school volunteerism, and Roger Gill was nominated, and the selection process is grueling, and he was awarded the Award for Excellence in School Volunteerism, so he will be with us at the dinner in October. There are over 700 people in the room, as Mr. Hurley and Mr. Gill will receive their awards, so we look forward to joining Roger Gill, and he's right there, so round of applause. And we'll invite Dan and Roger after the event so they can show us their plaques and medals. On opening day this year, we put up a slide, and I certainly wasn't on it. I aspire to be on it, but we had a number of staff members that had perfect attendance last year, and I just have to say we've made these for the transportation department. The transportation department knocked it out of the park percentage-wise, so we're going to try and recognize and, just give them a little something extra, and we'll be posting this in 2 locations in the bus garage. So, your health is a high priority, and not everybody can do it, but when you manage to do it, it's worth taking a minute to pause and say, hey, good for you. So, just wanted to mention that.
I'll just kind of jump in on that, because I was there when we welcomed the bus drivers back, and George really was thanking these individuals for their perfect attendance, because he said it was the first year he didn't have to pull the mechanics off fixing the buses and drive buses, that the buses were in the best shape they ever were because of it. Okay.
Yep.
Superintendent's report?
Yeah, just 2 things. One is that we did hold the annual Inspection of Schools tour on August 31st. Several of the board members joined us. It's a requirement by State Education Department that we tour the schools before they open, and we got to all of them but Violet Avenue, but we've certainly gone in there plenty of times. They were waxing the floors that day. Minus the issue with North Park, and we're going to be addressing that after the BOCES presentation. The school opening was extremely smooth. We had all of our typical minor bumps in transportation, but it was a very successful opening of school, minus the concerns we have and have been working on since August at North Park. And even with that said, attendance is excellent at North Park, and we managed to open up.
So, go.
Yeah, so now we're moving.
Yes, so now we'll have the capital project presentation from Dr. Hooley from Dutchess County BOCES.
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge that there are several staff members here, so welcome. Thank you for coming.
Great. You're stealing my thunder, and I'm just putting up the rendering. So, yes.
First of all, we'd like to recognize Perry Sheldon on your board, who serves on the Facilities Acquisition Committee, and that's very good for us because we don't want to just be a BOCES committee. We also have a business official from Millbrook who serves on that committee to advise us and to move forward as we go. Thanks for working us into your early meeting in the year, and I just want to wish all of you a Happy New Year because it certainly is an exciting time for everybody. So in terms of our guests tonight who are accompanying us, Sherry Wesley, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, Mitchell Schrone, our CTI Principal and resident of Hyde Park, Michael Batia, Staff Specialist at the Adult Learning Institute, and Genevieve Kellum, who's the Director of Communication and Grant Research. And before I start, I just want to kind of frame who Hyde Park is in relation to the BOCES, the Dutchess BOCES. So in our special education programs, we have 27 Hyde Park students, about 8% of the county. 11 are at SPC, which is our K-8 school with mostly students with IEPs, but not all. We have 12 Hyde Park students at Beta, which is our alternative high school on Route 44, and we'll talk about that a lot tonight. And then we have 4 of your students who are placed in district. Those are classrooms in other school districts, but they're BOCES classrooms. And then in terms of CTI, our career and technical, we have a grand total of 141 students from Hyde Park. Very impressive. And I'll just do this as quickly as I can. 9 of those are enrolled in auto mechanics, 6 in auto body, 11 in careers in animal and plant science, 4 in computer hardware and networking. Construction trades, we have 3 students, 11 in cosmetology. Culinary arts, we have 12. We have 5 students in early education. We have 4 in graphic arts, 12 in introduction to health occupations. I think this says 4 in practical nursing and assistant nursing. We have 27 in security and law. We have 10 in small engine, 7 in trade electricity, 7 in TV video production, and 4 in veterinary science. So it's quite a nice representation, and arguably what we're about to talk to impacts your students as much or more than some other school districts who we serve. So the project we're about to, so just to back up one giant step, you remember I came to you earlier asking about a financing issue, which was the intermunicipal agreement, and by the end of July, all school districts in this county had approved the intermunicipal agreement, meaning that all school districts have a lot of autonomy and flexibility in how they choose to address this funding should it pass in the vote, which is December 11th, Tuesday, December 11th of this year. So the project is cost neutral, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It creates a college and career opportunities, and it will provide flexibility for exceptional students in Dutchess County. As a superintendent, even as a high school principal, we always had a student who needed a special program or a special course of study. An example might be a senior who just needs English or just needs physical education. And if that student happens to be very adept at career and tech, he might take his course in the morning that he took last year, pick up English at this location once the work is done, and then stay in the afternoon for another career in tech. We're not going to have 20 of those, but we might have one here and one there, and when you're meeting the needs of a particular student, it can be a great thing, and we expect to see more flexibility like that as this project is completed. So, basically, we are going to renovate the Career and Technical Institute. We're going to relocate the alternative high school, the one that's on Route 44 on Dutchess Turnpike, and we're going to recondition parts of Salt Point Center. This is just an example of what happens when you don't do a major capital project in 50 years. This is above one of our culinary arts classrooms. We have a million pictures. I'm not going to waste your time tonight, but 50 years is a long time to go without a capital project, and it's just very tough. And as a reminder, this project came up, or one very similar to it, 9 years ago, and if it had passed at that time, we would be halfway done paying for it, so we'd be 50% of the way finished. So anyway, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here is a class of ours. This is auto mechanics. You'll see the blue thing to the left is one of the lifts for that class, and you see our students are sitting right there, not in desks, but in folding chairs. And clearly, the instructional technology is not benefited by being in a lab where there's dust and dirt and all the rest of it blowing in. So the computers and things like that in that room do not do very well or last very long. The next picture is a rendering of what we might do, and this is just an example, but Sherry, if you'll start on the left side, that classroom might be yeah, you're good. We get it. On the left side is a class that we're pretending might be a athletic training class, okay? If we wanted to offer the first steps in that and then continue that at Marist or at Dutchess. Then on the right side might be an ag class. Again, these are just renderings. But those two classes would share the middle room, the blue room, which would be a regular classroom, so that we would be able to protect the instructional technology, computers. That would be a place to do project-based learning and to do some of the classroom work that you don't want to balance on folding chairs. So that's just an example. This is the marquee outside of Beta. You'll see we're right at the top, but if you look at this carefully, it is warehousing and steel fabrication and quite an unusual place to have a school. And if you haven't, I would invite you someday to drive around the back. It really is a lot of warehouse space and a lot of cars of people we don't know, right there on our campus. And we've been there 28 years. So think about renting a property in your district for 28 years. And that building has not had the best record of maintenance. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had to close for 3 days because roof leaks caused flooding, and we couldn't have our students there. This is just a classroom. This is just a side entrance, and Sherry is going to point first to our entrance. This is where our students come and go out of the side of the building, that doorway. But over to the left is a loading dock, and that is to one of the warehouses. And we don't know who those people are, and I can bet you they're not fingerprinted. So as our students exit, you know, there's people coming in and going out all the time. We have trucks, panel trucks going through this driveway and these parking lots all the time. So that's just, in this time of school security and things like that, it's pretty stunning. So, more specifics about the project: $36.8 million. We will integrate 60,000 square feet of additional space on the Salt Point campus. So we'll move basically Beta to the Salt Point campus. 60,000 square feet is 20,000 square feet less than we are currently renting. So by working with our architects and thinking about flexible space, we were actually able to save some square footage, which, even though it may be incremental in terms of heating and cooling and things like that, it is, we're very mindful that this is paid for by taxpayers, and we want you to think we're not being lavish with the money should it pass. We don't currently have a high-tech conference space in Dutchess County, and we'd like to have one of those. And for those of you that have been to the beautiful and lovely 301, you know you have to walk right past classrooms. So the security is nil. People come in through that back door to get to the conference room, and there's really no way to secure it unless we put somebody there 24 or 7 hours a day, and that's pretty challenging. And then, so I've talked about security already, but also our CTI building is not ADA compliant in any measurable way. Basically, you have to get in your car and drive to the next level. We have one ramp, I think, but no elevators, and this change will add some elevators and make some of the building much more accessible. Not 100%, because it's built on the side of a hill, but much better than it is currently. So this is the rendering, and if you'll, Sherry, if you'll show the Salt Point Turnpike, which is right over there in the top right. So that's where you normally enter. That little building right there is the administration building that you drive past. Then coming up, the blue part of the building is the existing Career and Tech Center. The white part is the addition. And the new entrance, instead of being in front, will be around back, where the arrow is right now. And students will come in there, and then the group that are going to CTI will go to the left, and the group that are going to our alternative high school will go to the right. The great news about this is, because of the flexibility, if we had an increase in career and tech students, we could actually move those margins since the buildings are connected. If we had an increase of our alternative, we could actually take over some space that is currently CTI. And then if you'll show them where the conference center is, it is right there. And so there is an outdoor entrance there. So let's say Hyde Park wanted to use that space for a big meeting or Science Olympiad or something like that. You could actually enter from the outside, and it would be secure, and it would be available to the community who's basically paying for this. We don't have a space like that now that's that good, and there'll be some parking there as well. This will also offer more capacity at Salt Point Center, which is our K-8 program. And with that increased space, we can meet the growing demand for a couple of programs that aren't offered in the region. One very interesting one is called Twice Exceptional Students. And these are students who are gifted, but may also be challenged with autism or some other kind of IP-related need. And so they might be taught on the college level in 8th grade, but they also need help and support in dealing with either social, emotional, or other disabilities. So that's not offered in the region. Frankly, right now, I don't know where students who have those needs go, because I don't think we know of a place, even Putnam Northern Westchester does not offer that program. The other one is, that I can point to you quickly, is we have a program called Pegasus, which is a high school program, and it's mostly think about life skills so kids can live independently after graduation. But those same students do not have those life skills courses in the early grades, so and they need some. They're related to hygiene and things like that. And because we don't have that continuum of program, many school districts have to send those students to private Catholic schools that serve that population, or even to out of county, and also to tuition-based programs. So we could probably offer that with the additional space that we have in the early grades. So 9 through 12, we have had some conversations. Dutchess Community College is going through a strategic plan about their facilities, and we talked about, setting aside some classroom space to offer classes right there for some students who might be half-day in career and tech, and the other half might be in a college-based course or a continuation of their program. And then people say, well, once you do this, what are going to be the fancy new programs that you're going to offer at Dutchess BOCES? And the answer to that is it changes so quickly, and it is so related to what students decide they want to do. And my example, probably I've given it here before, is plumbing. Great need for it, good money, but kids do not sign up for plumbing in high school, and it's a shame. But one of the things we can do that is necessary is integrating our career and tech programs. So instead of just going for 2 years and learning about welding and only about welding, the excitement we could generate when we have our welding students do project-based learning with students in culinary or students in animal science, and developing projects that both skills could work together to create a problem and a solution. So that's the next big thing for us. And so having flexible spaces and rooms for maker spaces, or even spaces just to problem solve and brainstorm, is an important part of our next steps. And then finally, as you know, as we improve the facilities for CTI, we are improving the facilities for adult learners in the county. The Adult Learning Institute provides adult education for everybody in Dutchess County who wishes to go, and that conference center I've already talked about at some length. I will just show you an example. The top one is our conference center, which is room 301. That is basically 2 classrooms with the wall knocked down. We actually did some work on it this summer, so it looks better than that, but that's really it. And the one below it is Ulster BOCES, and that room can be divided and subdivided so that they can create large and small learning spaces for professional development and adult learning. And you see in the ceiling all of the video equipment, audio-video equipment that they have, so it's quite flexible and quite a bit ahead of where we are. Have any of you ever been to the Putnam Northern Westchester Conference Center? Because that would be palatial, and we're not going for that. We just want a nice one that is up to date. But it's pretty spectacular. I hope they're not listening. So, savings. We'll eliminate the escalating rental costs because we've been renting for 28 years. You can imagine the rental costs have gone up, and every time you do the lease, it's more money. And there's cost avoidance. So at Beta, we're talking about Beta now, everything that turned that warehouse into a school is on us. So a fire alarm, which you have to have if you have a school program, we have to maintain. Doors and windows, air conditioning, all of that stuff is our responsibility to maintain or replace. So we are headed towards some big cost in replacements and things like that. So one good thing is by moving out of there, we can avoid some of that, and that is not insignificant. Transportation costs, as you can imagine, we go back and forth a number of times a day. We actually take our food for Beta from our cafeteria at Salt Point Center. You know, it's not far, 7 miles maybe, but over and over again every day of the year for 28 years, it adds up. We also have couriers who bring mail and things like that, and the food, and those costs add up. School districts, likewise, if you have students in both programs, you're busing to one and then to the other. We bus students who have our Beta classes in the morning and career and tech in the afternoon, so we're doing busing as well as our components. And then keeping students in Dutchess County by expanding our Salt Point Center offerings will be another way to save money. In the, we have actually seen good professional development programs go to Ulster BOCES or Putnam Northern Westchester because our facilities are not so great. And that has a cost to a place like Hyde Park because now your teachers or the professionals that need training are now driving to different locations instead of right here in Dutchess County. So this is just an example of one of the lovely air conditioners sitting in standing water on the top of Beta. We do not own the roofs, so if we have to replace that, the roof is theirs, but the air conditioner is ours. So you can imagine what fun that will be. But these are pretty old, and although we do our best to maintain them, they're reaching the end of their life. Again, low interest rates. I've already talked about the $1.74 million that is not a part of this because of the intermunicipal agreement. Thank you very much. And state aid is available to most districts, but not to all. Hyde Park, it's available. Oh, I've missed you. So Sherry is going to go over the 8.5 by 11 sheet that talks about costs, and then I'll follow that with the big sheet.
Thanks. I just want to give a few more details to a couple slides ago. The information, well, you covered most of it. The sheets that start off saying cost neutral over 21 years. If you'll start with me on page 1. When we do talk about this being a cost neutral project, it's not going to happen in 1 year. And, we're not deceiving ourselves into thinking it is 1 year. But over the useful life of the building, there really will be pretty significant savings. And we've given you 3 columns. The first being if we were to continue to lease the current building, what it would cost over the next 21 years. And some of the things that Dr. Hooley already mentioned in terms of basic lease, the IT differences in terms of having to wire an entirely different building, shuttle back and forth for not only food but mail and supplies. Utilities would not totally go away, but a newer building will be much more efficient as well as being slightly smaller. So if we were to stay where we are over the next 21 years, the cost would be slightly over $21 million. Equally significant are the costs we can avoid, and Dr. Hooley mentioned some of the things that we know are just on the horizon. Our facilities director already knows we need to spend $1.4 million if we are to stay in that building for the next couple of years. So if you add some of those things that we know are immediate and just a standard percentage of what it costs to maintain a building of that type, we anticipate that over 21 years, there's another $21 million that can be avoided. We can totally eliminate some of the courier costs. We can totally eliminate some of the staff travel if we are to move. So to stay where we are over the next 21 years would cost just under $43 million. But if you go over to the next column, you'll see what would happen if this project is approved. And I'll also say the assumption here is kind of a worst-case scenario. That's with every district bonding for 20 years. We know from talking to some of our districts that that's not likely. Some will have shorter loans, less expense. But worst-case scenario, it would cost $32 million with the after aid. There would be 2 to 3 years of overlap, so we have put that in. Once construction starts, we can't immediately move in. So there are 3 years' worth of construction in this presentation. And then the reduced utilities, but recognizing that they don't totally go away. If the project is approved, it would cost just under $36 million over the course of those 21 years. But if you look at the cost avoidance section, you see there are tremendous savings, not only in terms of maintenance, recapitalization, but as I mentioned, courier costs, staff travel costs, some of those things that just totally disappear when you're on one campus. So over 21 years, there's roughly a $400,000 savings. But if you turn the piece of paper over, I think is where it gets really exciting. Within that 21st year and then going forward, we actually would be looking at almost $1.6 million worth of saving going forward. So once the loans from our districts are paid off and we are able to go forward in a building that we own, there will be really significant savings for the people in Dutchess County going forward. And we think that's really something that's more than worth considering. We think that's an important factor.
Any questions? Thank you. So, and again, if we had passed this 9 years ago, we'd be halfway there. So if you'll take out the big sheet of paper, we've highlighted for you the Hyde Park numbers, and I'll take you through that if you'll bear with me. I know we're going on a little long, but I think this might be the one time you get it from. So the 1819 estimated Arwada. So what we'll be doing is, this is how much your share is of the whole program. 8%, almost 9% of the entire cost is Hyde Park based on your enrollment. The aid ratio that you enjoy is a 54% aid ratio. Now, BOCES aid is slightly different from regular construction aid, so that's why this may not line up with what you think of as your construction aid. The estimated bond percentage is 88%. That means that we think that about 88% of this is eligible for aid. As you know, when you do a project, things like parking lots are not aidable. So the estimated total component share for Hyde Park is $3,200,000. The estimated annual component share over 20 years, if you bonded that, let's say, would be $233,000. But your aid, based on that aid number above, 54, would be $112,000, bringing your component share down to 121 for those 20 years. And once we finish renting, which will probably be, we'll have a few years of layover while the construction's going, your share of rent right now is $26,000. So take that away from the 121, and you're now down to $94,000 as your local share over those 20 years if it were all bonded. And again, these are all estimates. And then on your levy, that's approximately 0.16. And then at the very bottom, you'll see the cost per household. This is based on a $275,000 home, which is the average cost of a home in Dutchess County. So if you are just a regular taxpayer, it's $11 per year. If you have Star, it's $10 per year. And if you have Senior Star, it's $8 per year. And that's the cost. Because, as you can imagine, our good fortune is we have the whole county to divide it among, whereas when you do a bond, you can only look at the folks in Hyde Park. We'll finish this up. Any questions about that? I just think, and we'll do our best to try to convey that in our public meetings. We're trying to do our school board meetings first, and then during the month of October and November, get out and do rotaries and things like that, and we'll share this with the broader public. Each district pays a proportionate share based on enrollment, which is what I just went over. It's nice to know that $24 million in state aid will help to offset the costs here, and you've seen your share of that. And I've already been over this. Really, for the whole county, it's between $6 and $14 for everybody in the county. The time is right to prepare college and career-ready skilled workers for Dutchess County. It's the first major capital project in 50 years. And and you know this better than most, our students are really your students. Those students that come to us from the components is what makes up the BOCES population. And I think you can tell, but if you can't, most kids are coming from much better facilities in their home school to come to BOCES, and that shouldn't be the case. So, vote December 11th, it's a Tuesday. The design to SED for approval, September 2019. We'll have the competitive bidding in April and May, breaking ground in 2020, and the project complete in 2022. Now, as people working on a bond yourself, I'm sure you know that that timeline doesn't always work, but that's our plan. And the vote, again, is from 12 noon to 8 p.m. on that day. There will be 14 polling sites, so there'll be a polling site in every single school district and one at BOCES. We are right now lining up the poll workers for all those 14 sites. It should be a lot of fun. And here they are listed. Hyde Park will be at Hyde Park Elementary in the cafetorium. And then here are the rest of the county. Just don't forget to vote. And it's just to be clear, voting is for everybody in the county. As you know, qualified voters, you don't have to be a registered voter to vote in a school election, you just have to be a qualified voter. And a qualified voter is someone 18 years of age or older who has lived in the county for 30 days and is a U.S. citizen. So when people come to vote, we'll ask them to record their address and their name, and then they'll be given a paper ballot, and they will put that paper ballot in a wooden box, and that wooden box will be built by our students, and we're off to the races. We can't really put money aside for elections since it's such a rare thing. So what questions do you have? You've been very patient, and I'm sorry it's a lot, but we want to make sure you have as many answers as we can.
Any questions?
So anybody in the county can vote at any one of those?
Good point, right. We are calling it a voting district. The entire county is a voting district, and you may vote at any location you please, because they are just polling places in the voting district. And we will work with our attorneys on how we will collect that data to ensure that there are no double votes and things like that.
Thank you.
Good question.
I just want to add a couple comments that first of all, I'm a product of BOCES myself, so, and I'm not Dutchess County BOCES, it was upstate New York, and I'm very proud of my education that I received at BOCES, and I think that it's was a great foundation for what I think has been a great career. With that, and Dr. Hoey did say that the BOCES students are our students, and quite frankly, the facility that those students are working in or trying to be educated in, if those were in Hyde Park, people would be screaming, you know? And it's difficult because we don't want to say how bad it is, but people need to know that we need to make an investment in the education program in Dutchess County. BOCES program offers some very unique opportunities, particularly for students that have trouble. That homeschool may not be the place for them to get their education. They may not be headed for college, or they may be. But these are students that we need, that need the right facility to work on. And I think it's going to be too easy for a lot of people to look away and say, you know what, that doesn't really affect me. But it does. It does, because at some point you're going to need to take your car and have it fixed, and you're going to want an auto mechanic. And maybe we don't have a plumbing program now, but you're going to need a carpenter to hang that screen door. You're going to, these are all very valuable things that, and I'll get off my soapbox in a minute, but people need to pay attention to this. This is something that needs to be voted, needs a positive atmosphere. People need to get behind it and say, you know what, we're going to do this because we care about the students, we care about the education and the quality of life for people in Dutchess County. And I just hope everybody comes out and votes for this and supports it.
Thank you. I'll just say the new ESA plan, Every Student Succeeds Act, has a lot of impact. So students who graduate with a designation for career in tech, that gives points to your total overall score. We also will be offering, as we have in the past, high school equivalency, and those used to not get any points under the old accountability system, but if you have students who earn a degree that way and they can do that at BOCES, then that also will help your numbers as a component district. So I will shut up now. If anybody has any question, or somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, send them our way. It's our job to know those answers and to respond, and we'll return phone calls and get back to people. So thank you.
So next on the agenda is a North Park Elementary update. We have with us Safety and Health Coordinator from Dutchess County BOCES, Certified Mold Assessor, Brian Colandria.
Thanks for coming, Brian. I know you've had a long couple of weeks.
Yes, I'm very tired. I apologize, but it's been a long couple of weeks. So, as we're all aware, we had a mold issue going on at North Park. I was called in. The first day I spent there was August 27th. Began, visual inspections, sampling, and we found extensive growth, widespread through the building. Made recommendations immediately to begin the cleaning of it. And where we are now is we had the meeting last week for those of you who were in attendance, and as a result of that meeting, we began sampling daily. I've been doing the same sample set every day, and as I thought it would be, we get number of ounces, which is a normal thing with mold. There's no, I think the best way to put it, there's no linear motion with this kind of thing. But the more important aspect, which I was stressing also last week, is the visual inspections, and those it's night and day from when I started. Now I'm still finding little bits and pieces, but I'm hunting now, if you will, as opposed to just going in and going, here it is. I'm good at hunting for this stuff. I find it. I've had people in the past be annoyed because I keep finding it, but I'm determined to get this done with, and hopefully put this behind us. I'm tired because this has been popping up in other places as well. I've been waiting for this, in fact, all summer, given the weather conditions we've had. My former boss at Ulster BOCES and I have been talking over the summer. Both of us have been cringing because of the weather and waiting. There are years when we get nothing. There are years when we get it everywhere. This year has been bad. August was above average rainfall. It's been very hot. It's been high dew points, high humidity. It's been a pain. I mean, the district has implemented the mitigation things that I've recommended. They've got dehumidification going. They've got air scrubbers going, which are the HEPA filters. They're putting more air conditioning in. These are all components to help deal with this. Nothing replaces eyes. Okay, that's the air sampling. I'm I don't know what everyone's familiarity with is, but that's a tool to be used. It's part of my due diligence. But I'll put it this way. If I did the visuals inspections without sampling, that's still very effective. If I did sampling without a visual inspection, it's pointless. It serves no function. So I'm not thrilled where we are. I'd like us to be, but we're so far ahead of where we were. I'm happy with that. I have been critical at times of some of the cleaning I've seen, and I've expressed that to the superintendent and to our facilities department. And I'm got the same things going on in some other places, and I've got the same criticisms going on. We're continuing to do this. I've been at the school every single day. That's become my morning routine. Get to work, go to North Park. I'm there for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. So I'm comfortable where we are. I'm happy where we are compared to where we were. I'm not sure how much longer we'll continue to do the daily sampling. Like I said, there's a point where you get diminishing returns on it. It does not telling me a lot. If you just look at those, one day you say, oh, it looks like we have a problem. The next day it looks like there's nothing. The next day it looks like we have a problem again. We have all kinds of fluctuation, and it's a challenge because there's so many things that affect it. The other day I took samples, and I was not able to take an outdoor sample, which I like to do as a comparison sample, because it was raining. And when it's raining heavy, knocks the spores down out of the sky. Your outdoor sample, at that point, it makes the inside look worse than it is. So it's a challenge. I've been doing sampling in the same spots at approximately the same time every day over the last several weeks. And usually I have someone's with me. Mr. Elliott is with me, Sheldon, usually, and I point out anything I see while we're doing this to make sure that it's getting, and like I said, I'm still finding spots. I find a spot here, I find a spot there. And it's, like I said, because I will hunt for it. And there was it's been brought up, one of the air samples had a single spore of Stachybotrys. Stacky, unfortunately, gets a bad rap. That's what everyone refers to as the quote-unquote toxic black mold, which is something of a misnomer. And if you look on, just for a CDC is a good website to go look on and get some more information on that. Someone had brought it up that was concerned about it. It was a single spore was counted. Okay, it's not normally a species that you find on an air sample. It doesn't like to be airborne. A single spore of any species in an air sample is not significant to me. It has no significance. Where it came from, I can't be sure. I found nothing in the room. There's no visual evidence of anything. But I'd like, try to get everyone to understand that we constantly, beyond it being ubiquitous in the environment, we track it around. Okay. When you're outside, you walk in, you've got mold on you. You've got mold on your clothes. You've got mold on your shoes. One of the issues that we have when kids go out for recess, they're playing in the grass, they track it in. This is not just here, this is everywhere. This is not the first time I've been through this. And to try to say, well, this is the reason, it's a challenge. I haven't seen any leaks in the building, which is good. This is very much, this instance at least is very much a climate issue. And I'm not sure if there's anything else. Does anyone have any questions then, or?
Any questions?
Sleep?
We have to wait for public participation?
Sorry.
But not for the board.
Not for the board. We can have.
So what would you recommend? So you're suggesting that we're getting better, or that it's better. What's your recommendation going forward at this point?
No, we continue doing what we're doing, which is,
Okay.
I'm not going to recommend stopping anything. I'm not recommending stopping dehumidification. I mean, what I need, and I need this all over the place, is for the weather to break. It's been relentless. Like, we had some blue skies this afternoon, and I was like, ugh. Within half an hour, it was raining again. We need the humidity to go down.
So the point is continue with our cleaning process?
Yes. I mean, I will continue to look, I'll continue to do visuals. Hopefully, I won't have to do every single day. I'm neglecting other schools right now, between this school and another district, and I still need to get to some of the other ones as well. But like I said, what I'm finding is nothing compared to, if I was to go into if this was the first day I went in the building, I might not be like, oh, I don't see I wouldn't see what the problem was. It'd be hard to see. So, like I said, this is good. We're in good shape. And as I said, I've been, you can ask Mr. Sheldon. I've been critical at times and pointing out things what I want to see done and things I want to see done differently. And then they've gone ahead with that. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is public participation. Just letting you know, public participation, we'd like you to state your name, and you will, when we open it up, you'll go to the microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes. We will not be able to respond until we close public participation. So at this time, can I have a motion to open public participation?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody that would like to address the board or ask a question, please go to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Melissa Walsh. I have 2 children at North Park in the K through 2 wing. In an effort to obtain some of the facts on this situation at North Park, I have a series of questions I'd like clarity on. Please note these questions were emailed to the entire board on 9/11. According to the North Park Elementary Air Quality Fact Sheet, there have been moisture issues with North Park since 2013. What triggered the concerns in 2013? Was there evidence of mold found in the building? Was a prevention and remediation plan instituted in 2013 to monitor for mold and moisture levels ongoing? If a plan was put in place, should there have been ongoing monitoring? At the 8/23 board meeting, Ms. Rychek stated that North Park had been sealed for the summer. If a moisture or mold problem exists, why would the building have been sealed, which would allow the moisture issue to intensify and lead to mold growth? If moisture prevention practices were put in place, why didn't those practices prevent the mold that was identified in early August from surfacing? Who created the moisture prevention plan in 2013, and has any consideration been made to obtain a second opinion on that plan? What is the plan to address turning on the heating system? How will the ductwork be inspected to ensure mold growth is not growing inside? More specifically, will the ductwork be cleaned? How will the mold testing be employed when the heating system is turned on? Has a process been established for reporting health complaints from students and staff regarding this exposure to mold? Is there a plan to evaluate symptoms of students and staff within 3-month intervals? Parents should be educated by the district as to the potential symptoms of mold exposure. A reporting procedure should be established so that parents can provide this information to the schools for review and ongoing assessment. Lastly, what training is involved to become a certified mold assessor? This is an important issue that warrants all of the facts. I would appreciate it if the board provided a detailed response to each question rather than generalized responses. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Go ahead.
I don't understand how black mold can be just a single,
Name, please.
I'm sorry, Julianne Moore, senior accountant, local school. I don't speak very well, but I can give you any kind of numbers you would like. black mold, have any walls been taken down to see if these black mold is only one spore? What chemicals have been used to clean this mold that our children are still in? This local school that I work in immediately shut down a wing to remediate every kind of mold, whether it be, I don't know what kinds of molds there are. The rates are dropping in Hyde Park. Is that the reason why since 2013 nothing has been done? I want 100% guarantee my daughter will be safe. Not that I don't think you are qualified, but it does seem slightly biased. And simply saying that raining is an excuse is just an excuse. Having visual checks doesn't really validate anything. And saying black mold, a single spore, is not acceptable. Neglecting other schools is even worse. That's it.
Anyone else like to address the board?
I'm Doug Eglinton. I'm well known to some of the older board members. I spoke to you briefly in June. You have two problems. The board should immediately appoint a joint board staff committee to work on each of these. The first problem is your expenditures each year continue to rise while your student enrollment continues to drop. Now, this is going on for the 8 years I've lived here down in northern Poughkeepsie in the Hyde Park School District. We've got a lot of elderly people and people who have limited incomes. They have limits on their income. We've got people who are, of course, two earners in the family, and they're still squeezed. You can't, this whole country is suffering because we keep letting costs go up and taxes go up, and that's got to stop. I'm suggesting you get a board staff committee together right now and work on hopefully getting to a 0 level in the spring and a down level the following spring. That's one problem. The other problem you have is a terribly difficult problem, and I don't have any answers for you. But I think you need a joint board staff committee to work long range on improving the output of your schools. We're overcome by this nonsensical telephone, electronic business of people walking down the street. They forgot to talk to each other. They bump into each other. I've seen it every week in cities. And we've got to get our graduates out of this school district somehow to use this in a better way, to use their heads in a better way. And this is a terribly difficult problem. I don't have any answers, as I've said, but I think you need to get somebody long range to work on it. Okay? Thank you very much.
It's changed. Questions and leaves.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Stephen Meyer, 11 Kessler Drive. Gleefully, merely a member of the community instead of a member of the board. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the board for successfully concluding the negotiations with the HPUEA. I think that's a milestone, and I'm grateful to see that we have a peaceful end to those negotiations. I am curious, I have not seen a published number as far as what that cost is as a % increase, excluding STEP. So if you happen to have that number, I'd be interested. I have to comment that the BOCES capital project presentation that we saw and I studied at not much length, frankly, looks way better than the last capital project proposal that we saw from BOCES, and I'm going to encourage everybody that I know and meet to support it. I think that it's cost-effective, it's efficient, and it's about time. Congratulations to the board on their decision to appoint Jeff to the presidency. I think that that was a good decision for the board. Hopefully it's a good decision for Jeff, although I think it might be a little overwhelming. And so I offer him my congratulations and support if there's anything I can do for you. Finally, I wanted to talk about the mold issues at North Park for a moment. My recollection, after having been on the board for 10 years, was that that was discussed on nearly an annual basis. It was discussed frequently. I remember several conversations about what was being done, how it was going to be addressed. I think it's unfair for people to, who are seeing this for the first time, to think that we saw it in 2013 and then we ignored it, or that we forgot about it. So I can attest from my own recollection, I did surrender all of my meeting notes when I left the board, so I can't look at my own records, but I do remember discussing it regularly. And the current situation, it looks like the district responded promptly and strongly to the issues. Seems like a very reasonable response. I'm wondering whether the root causes of the problem are known, and what are the plans to address them? Are there plans to test the building earlier next year to ensure that the mold levels are under control before the first day of classes? Those are my current set of comments. It's great to see you all. Thank you.
Hi, Jessica Patterson. Do you need my address too? Okay. So my question is when is the next capacity and enrollment study being done? I know this was discussed a few months back. And will the North Park issue be taken into consideration if it's chosen to be closing another elementary school? And the second part is when is the next air sample at North Park being done? That's it.
What's this? What's the second?
When's the next air sample?
Hi, my name is Julianne Perry. I have two daughters at North Park Elementary. And my question is directly to Ms. Rychek. I asked her this question at the meeting at North Park about the mold, and I did not get a response or answer. There seems to be a lot of mistrust in the community about this mold issue, and after I went to the meeting, I understood why that mistrust was there. As a parent, I was expecting the superintendent to address us on a humanitarian level, that she was concerned deeply. The response that we received at the meeting was that it was a canned response that she just kept repeating over and over again. It was very bureaucratic, and it made me see why there's so much distrust in the community regarding this issue, because I felt like they were there just to protect themselves, and they were not there to address the issues at hand, which was our children's safety. the question that I asked at the meeting was that if it was considered to incorporate parents and teachers into this process to kind of alleviate those mistrust issues that we have in the community. Unfortunately, I didn't receive an answer to that, so at this time, that is my question.
Anybody else who would like to address the board? Can I have a motion to close public participation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. So there is, let's, guess we'll work our way through them. For one, I don't believe we did seal North Park for the summer. I do believe we had a teacher on vacation, or the principal on vacation, but I don't believe the building was sealed for the summer. I did know we moved air conditioners to the summer program, but that was it for the building on being sealed. We are looking, we will be doing some ductwork cleaning. Do you want to talk about that?
All of the unit ventilators were cleaned, vacuumed, and new filters placed in based on additional, just extra precaution. Ashley Mechanical is coming in this weekend to completely scrub and get inside all of the unit ventilators. So they'll be there all weekend.
I think it's worth noting that we're not talking about ductwork here. This isn't, in a typical HVAC system, you see, just runs of ductwork, long horizontal runs of ductwork. That's not what exists here. In a classroom, you have a unit ventilator typically, and a unit ventilator is, think of it as it's a heater, air-moving device that sits against the outside wall. There's literally not 2 feet of ductwork in the entire assembly. So don't think, it's different. I mean, and everybody's concerned about the cleaning ductwork. I mean, there's an industry built of cleaning ductwork. There isn't ductwork there to be cleaned. We're cleaning the inside of the equipment is what it is. And the typical concern with ductwork is that you get dust and all other types of particles in there and schmutz that becomes food for mold. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, it's the equivalent of putting a fan, something of a larger fan against the outside wall and drawing air through it. That's really what the ductwork is. So I don't want people going away thinking that there's this elaborate network of ductwork that we can't get to or aren't able to clean or is filled with mold. That's not the case. You open this up, you see everything. I mean, it's very quick. Basically, there's a filter, a fan, and a little bit of sheet metal, and you're done. So I just want to clarify that for all those involved.
And I wanted to ask Elliot to come up. There were some questions about what we've done since 2013. We did post on our website some of the remediation efforts that we have done, both mechanically. So if you could address some of those.
My notes, 1 second.
Well, and I'm willing to address, there was a question brought up about what we've done since 2013 and how, I mean, it's not that, we've had problems. The severity of the issues is very much environmental, based on what the environment is. This year, we're having a huge issue with high humidity. Last year wasn't so bad. Actually, the year before was a tougher one. There was more, so it's not a consistent. It's, could we have gotten onto it earlier? In hindsight, probably, that might have helped. But it's not that we've had to, what do I say? This is by far worse than what I think we've had in the past, or we've gotten a little behind the 8 ball, I guess is what I would admit, what I see from my viewpoint, is perhaps we should have started maybe in 1st of August and jumped on it. But it's all a matter of, expectations. I mean, we got a lot of buildings to clean, so the way that we work through, we do what we can. And, this one is somewhat of a perfect storm.
Thank you. So would you want me to speak to what's been done since 2013? So the concerns were originally raised in 2013 by staff observation over the summer in the building. We were called in to examine it. We brought in Mr. Calandria's predecessor at the time to inspect and make recommendations. It was noted in the 2013 Master Facilities Plan that the building's HVAC system, along with some other buildings' heating and ventilation systems, should be upgraded in an upcoming capital project, not just deep into the future, but that there was somewhat of a more expressed need at that location. In 2014 and 15, air quality tests were performed by Dutchess BOCES. Recommendations for specific cleaning practices were implemented. Every time we have a test, it does come with recommendations for care and remediation, and that were followed in 2014-15 school year. In 2015, we did our state-mandated building condition survey, which was required to do every 5 years. And again, we had a team of architects and engineers come in, go through the heating and ventilation system there, and make recommendations for upgrade. In 2016, the district leadership team substantiated that observation and incorporated it into the capital project referendum, which we just voted on this past May, and it's currently under schematic design. In the previous school year, in 2017-18, we upgraded the heating and ventilation controls at that building. What that means is, to Mr. Sheldon's point, the equipment is still the same equipment that we put in 1965 at the point of initial construction. However, we upgraded the means by which that system is activated. A couple of things that happened as a result of that is we went from zone control to room control. So each individual classroom now can call for heat on its own. Whereas previously, and some of the staff in the room can attest, you were locked into a cluster of 6, 8 or more rooms, and the temperatures were modulated as a group at the time. So now the individual rooms can call for heat on their own. We also rehabilitated the mechanical equipment in the room. So I would say probably when this issue first came up, one of the recommendations was to improve the ventilation of the building. At the time, we were heavily reliant on the building's exhaust system. The supply air to the classrooms was in less than ideal shape. It was probably, I'd say, less than half of the classrooms had functional ventilation. And so all of that was repaired in the project in the 2017-18 school year. In putting in the new controls, part of that was a retro commissioning to bring all the old equipment back into operating function. What that does is it provides fresh air from the outside to be blown into the classrooms, not just passively infiltrated. So that did improve the ventilation. It reduced CO2 levels. Adding fresh air to the building sometimes, if it's damp air, can compound our humidity issues. So that may or may not have been a factor, as Mr. Calandria spoke earlier. We don't always know what causes these things, but we do know that the building had more air passing through it in the last school year than it has in many years previously. And so that may have been a contributing factor, but that was substantially completed this past year. And just as a point of reference, the board was very specific in the direction on implementing that project. The lion's share of that upgrade will be applicable to the forthcoming capital project. So we're not just taking that stuff out and replacing it. The majority of the components put in with that project are going to be serviceable with the next phase of capital construction to renovate the balance of the heating and ventilation equipment in that building. And that's where we are right now. Schematic design is nearing completion, and we believe at the next board meeting, the architects and engineers will be here for anyone that has specific questions as to what that system's going to look like. I would encourage you to come to our next board meeting. We'll have the architect and his team of engineers here to speak to their design recommendation for North Park. And North Park, just for anybody that's not aware, was prioritized ahead of every other elementary school, specifically because of indoor air quality concerns. It's the only elementary school that's being addressed in this capital phase of construction because of that. And the heating and ventilation system that's going to be installed is being designed around optimization of indoor air quality, specifically in terms of air filtration and humidity management.
So,
Go ahead.
Elliot, we're also looking at trying to speed up North Park.
Yes, that's
The
correct.
changes.
The State Education Department's current lead time for general construction projects is roughly 40 weeks, which means once we finish designing a project, we send it to Albany, we wait for them to review it, they send it back to us. Once approved, we can then put it out to bid, vet the bidders, the board would award the contracts, and then we go through all the paperwork before we can start construction. So you can imagine, at the current lead time, that would put us well beyond next summer. Dr. Rychek and the board has committed to, I'll say, heavily supporting SED's expedition of this project, and we've already been in touch. Dr. Rychek and I have spoken to Roseanne Groff, who's the director of State Education Facilities Planning Office. She's aware of our concerns. She's aware of the remediation efforts we've taken to manage North Park, certainly understanding that we can't correct it properly without a capital construction project. And so far, she's been receptive to our inquiries. However, we can't formally lobby for an expedited review until the schematic design is completed and ready for submission. So our hope is that with the next board meeting, the board will hopefully be happy with what they see, and if not, provide proper feedback to correct it and finalize that schematic design. We want to get it up to Albany as soon as possible, and then we're ready to go up there with a whole team of Hyde Park administrators and board members. Certainly at that point, we'll be asking our parents and staff to support us as well with letters and additional vocal support to emphasize the importance of getting this expedited.
So at this time, there's no guarantee of safety?
I don't know if that's appropriate for me to address.
Not for Elliot, anyway, to answer that question. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you.
Elliot, while you're still there, because there were two other questions. What were the chemicals used in the cleaning?
Okay, so we have a number of chemicals used. I have in front of me the specific chemicals used by our contracted vendor. If you let me pull it up. One of them is called Virex 2, which is a disinfectant cleaner. And the other, if you give me a moment to just pull it up, is called Mint Quat Plus. And quats are a classification of chemical that are used by commercial cleaners. I do have the SDS sheets. If anybody needs that, you can email me or reach out to the board. They'll forward your inquiry to me. I can provide SDS sheets for any of these. These are chemicals outside of what we use typically in a standard workday. I also have sheets available for all of the chemicals that we use in every school building. So if anybody has a specific question about what we use for daily cleaning, I can provide the data sheets for that as well.
Okay, I have one other question.
At this time, we can't take any more conversation from the...
I just didn't hear.
Let me repeat it. It was, the second chemical was called Mint Quat, Q-U-A-T plus.
Mint Quat.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I apologize.
And again, my email address is on the website under Facilities and Operations. If anybody wants to reach out for the data sheets for that, you can email me and I can send them out.
Okay, could you stay there? And
yes, sir.
Could Brian come back up for a minute? I would like to know, the other thing that I noted was about shutting down the wing and complete remediation. Is that even possible? What does complete remediation mean?
You can ask Anderson Center for Autism.
No, I didn't ask you, ma'am. I'm asking the...
Oh.
That's the way we do things.
I'm not quite sure what that actually means. If a person's expectation is that, for example, that a sample would come back like with nothing on it, that's not a reasonable no, I'm not sure. I don't know what it means when you say.
Doug, he was referring to another school, not ours, about the shut down the wing.
No,
Oh.
no, that
I
was
didn't
one of
know.
the questions by the here.
I think that the confusion is that I think the parent, and I'm not sure I caught it exactly, but looking at shutting down the building, shutting down the wing and doing a complete remediation.
Right.
By definition, in mold work, it doesn't really have, I'm not really sure what that means, what that scope is.
Cleaning and remediation are essentially.
I just wanted that to be discussed. That's
Yeah, so is it deep clean, we have done, I would say we've done that. I mean, we've taken, this weekend, we had, how many man-hours spent in cleaning the entire wing?
Last weekend, we had 15 people for 8 hours one day, and, well, I'm sorry, no, we had 20 people for 8 hours one day, and another 9 for 10 hours the following, so. I can do
Okay,
some
so
quick
so
math,
in
but that's-
in that time, there were materials removed, there was furniture removed that was deemed not to be able to be cleaned.
That's correct.
Is there any surface in that wing or in those classrooms that was not cleaned?
To my knowledge, no. I mean, Brian's been looking around trying to find exactly that. I mean, if there's a random shelf
Yeah,
that wasn't touched.
and let's be clear, the best way to identify mold is visual. It's a visual inspection.
That's
Air samples are only for the purposes of
they're a tool.
It's a tool, yeah. It's not, the primary purpose, the primary way of identifying mold is visual.
Right.
That's the way it is, and that's what we've been doing, is we've been doing the visual inspections. We continue to do the visual inspections. We're doing air sampling just as another tool to back up to see whether or not our cleaning, our visual inspections and repeated cleaning are working. I haven't seen the results of more recent samples, but the sample results that we were looking at on Monday night, it's been a long week, I think it was Monday night.
Monday night.
Clearly, from a sampling standpoint, look good, because you take sample on the exterior of the building, you take samples on the interior of the building, and if you can get your samples on the interior of the building to be lower than the samples on the exterior of the building, that's success, because there's mold everywhere.
Yes, there's mold everywhere.
Absolutely. Yep.
There is typically hundreds, depending on what day it is, there can be hundreds of thousands of times the level outside than there is inside.
I didn't see that on the report.
No, that doesn't necessarily, but that is, it's very typical. I've seen samples where cladosporium is the most common we see, that's generally the highest numbers. I've seen indoor samples of that, 20, 30,000, when the outside was 50, 60,000. I mean, and it's nothing that grows. And just for more with the black mold, there are many molds that are black. Cladosporium is black if it's there. There are other ones too. There's a lot of sort of misinformation regarding mold.
That you were told?
You can.
In general. I mean,
We can't take any questions from the floor at this time.
but anyway, I mean, this is, the recommendations I've made, I consider to be, the correct things to do. My goal is to see that this stuff is removed. I have no desire for anyone to be exposed to anything, and so my tolerance is always 0 when it comes to mold. If there's mold there, I want it removed. Like I said before, I do sampling as due diligence, but I don't care what kind it is or what amount it is. I want it removed anytime I find it. So that's how I conduct myself.
And you take surface samples, air samples?
The surface samples I took initially, because the first time through I visually see something, I want to identify what that is, because it may not match what an air sample shows. There's many times when that happens. Certain molds are more likely to be airborne than others. It's just, I mean, there's so many nuances with this stuff.
And none of your surface samples showed?
I'm not taking any. I mean, I took one.
Your initial samples never showed any of the so-called black mold?
No, we had one spore showed up on one air sample. Yeah.
Unless my daughter can be 100% guaranteed of safety, she won't be going to Hyde Park.
Shouldn't get it.
So, Brian, what does it take to be a certified mold assessor?
The law went into effect in 2016, and it's a 4-day course. I already had almost 10 years experience working with mold prior to taking the class. It was about 8.5 years.
And I know every agency they contact.
We cannot take anything from the floor at this time, please.
No problem.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I still, I wear hearing aids, so, check me if I'm wrong. But I think I heard something about health checks on a 3-month interval. Did anybody want to comment on what that would entail? I mean, it sounds like a good thing, but I don't know how it would be.
I know Dr. Ritter just left. He was here. I've been consulting with him. I would need we employ a school physician, and I would need him to weigh in on a concept like that. We've been monitoring reports from the nurse's office. We've heard from the nurse about what we're hearing. We've provided documents on the website from CDC and EPA, and really the medical condition of any individual child. You should absolutely be in consultation with your doctor. If you wanted to discuss that with the school district, we would have to get our doctor involved as well. And he was here. He would be the one to comment on that. We do not test children for medical. That is not a service. But I'll consult with Dr. Ritter, but that's not we don't medically examine children here.
Okay, one more. You're done. Yeah, you're done. Okay. Because that's to do with Mr. Eglinton. Even though he says and leaves, in case he watches the show, everybody's expenses go up. You can't get around that. Health goes up. You buy gas, that goes up. Your food cost goes up. Everything goes up, and the people who work for us, they have expenses that go up as well. And there's an expectation, and we've held the raises, I think, to a minimum, and our employees have accepted them, and we've done a good job, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years on that regard. As far as improving output for graduates, Mr. Eglinton, if you're watching, we do have something, it's called the DLT, that we are working on graduation rates, the curriculum, all those things that make our students better prepared for life. So if you want to come back to the next meeting, maybe I'll talk to you before the meeting. It's like talking over the TV, but, you know, I have to be nice to him. His name's Doug, and my name's Doug, you know. So you know, a lot of Dougs, but when I see him in the next one, I will talk to him before the meeting. So that's all that I have down. Thank you.
Well, I would kind of also say the DLT is working, the teachers and the administrators are working really hard on changing a lot of the ways we think. And critical thinking, we call the 4 C's, and I think we have to give them a lot of credit for what they're trying to do right now. So we do plan to see a change. When I first became a board member, I went to one of the seminar, and all he talked about was how we had to change the way we are teaching. And those that came in 3 years later was the 4 C's, exactly what he was talking about. And in the company I work, those qualities are what they're looking for. So I think our teachers and need to be commented on or complimented on what they're doing and trying to change this. As for enrollment study.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that one.
Yeah, we are planning to do one this year. And I will not say we're going to close the school down or check, but we will see what the enrollment study brings. We are planning to put a lot of money into North Park and fixing the air handling system. So I won't say that's we're going to be closing, but we will be looking at the enrollment study and what does that mean for Hyde Park. Is there anything else?
Two things. One, even when we looked at this issue at one point, when we talked about the enrollment study, and Perry, I think it was you and maybe backed up by Kevin, that whenever you own property, you need to maintain it. So regardless of the outcome of the enrollment study, we should maintain our buildings, whether we're going to use them or we hope to do something with them in the future, they still need to be maintained. And it was determined and that was exactly where the district leadership team landed to make the decision to put North Park first on the list to remediate the HVAC system, even though we don't know the outcome of our enrollment studies this year or in the future. But yeah, in the spring, we've already signed a contract with Western Suffolk BOCES to do the study as far as numbers and what could be, and based on the information that we receive from them, we will look at their report and determine if the next step is to get a community-based committee together, as we did last time, to look at our next steps. Is it Ms. Perry? I would very much like to apologize to you for not getting back to you on that specific question. It was a little bit heated that night, and it got lost. Lynette Williams, the principal, and I, Elliot and I have been working round the clock 24/7. I was on the floor with Brian at 7:15 a.m. this Monday morning, watching him conduct a visual inspection. So if the board would like a session or two where we look at this with a group of people, where some of the board members and some experts in the field, I am neither certified in mold or any remediation. So my job is to rely on the experts that we hire. In no way is this something that I'm not concerned about. This is my home district. I take great pride in this district, and I take great care in every single child that comes through the door. So again, my sincere apologies that got lost in the mix. I will see if the board would like to arrange for a couple of sessions, but a session with me without any medical, without any mold specialists, that I won't be able to provide any of the answers, so.
Yeah, I'm always open to discuss it. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that there isn't anything but 100% transparency here. I mean, we're putting the reports, we're putting all the tests that we're doing, everything's going on the website. There's nothing being held back. I'm not sure, in some ways, I'm not really sure what people are looking for. I mean, this is a tough one. I mean, we're working on it. I know that we've got people working 7 days a week, trying to do everything we can do to clean, to re-inspect, to retest, to reports. I mean, we're driving air samples down to New Jersey so that we can get the quickest turnaround possible. And I'm open. I mean, if a bunch of, parents want to meet, and, but everything's been said. I mean, I don't know that there's anything more to say. We can't guarantee that it's 100% of anything, because you know what? There's mold everywhere. Your child goes out and plays in the lawn, they're playing in mold. It's out there. It was higher. It was higher when we started. The cleaning has obviously been very successful in getting rid of a lot of it. We're continuing to clean more. I mean, I question whether it makes sense for us to do as much as we're doing now, because we've got the counts down. The last air sample that we've got, the counts are lower inside than they are outside. At what point do we say, let's start cleaning the sidewalk? I'm serious.
Have an expert or a mold remedial, whatever he is.
Right.
And he's saying he's not satisfied. The one with very first
I understand.
We're not going to do anything?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'm saying that.
Hold, please, at this time.
No, I'm not, and that's why we're not, that's why he's making the decision.
Brian, can you come up and clarify your comment?
Why are we doing so much? You're not certified. He's saying that he's not happy until it's 0%.
Right, so we continue to do it.
No, yes, you're never going to get to zero. Okay, that's not going to happen. That's not a realistic. What I keep saying is I have zero tolerance for it. I don't allow anything I see. I recommend we get rid of it immediately, which is the most I can do. I recommended removing some of the kinds of furniture because I was seeing repeated growth on it, and It was, they were having a hard time cleaning it for different reasons. So I said, let's get rid of it. And so.
Have we
I
not
did
done
that.
anything you've asked?
No, you've done everything I've asked.
Okay.
Sufficient funds to do what you need to do?
Funds. Well, I mean, my service is purchased.
It's not a joke.
No, my service is purchased by a district, like any other BOCES service.
Right, but the rates have been going down.
This is time.
I'm not, what rates? Well, I'm not sure what you mean.
Brian, just.
All right, okay.
End it with me, but everybody else can talk.
Nobody should have been talking.
No,
There is a second public participation plan for any additional questions that need to be asked, but at no time have we ever advertised public participation to be an exchange between the people that are attending our meeting or observing our meeting and ourselves. It is a discussion period for asking questions that were not clarified, that need clarification.
But I asked the question, nobody answered it.
You would, if we missed a question and it's not intentional, we all have lists here, we've all been checking them. There will be a second public participation after we do complete the business of the district. You are more than welcome to sit there and point out the mistakes we've made, and we'll honor your question.
I don't know if you made any mistakes, I'm just asking.
If we didn't answer your question, we made a mistake. It's that simple. The question was asked, we should have either responded with an answer or indicated we don't have the information at this time. We take your number and name and get back to you as soon as we clarify the questions. And while I'm speaking right now, there's been a question about committees being formed. I offered my services to Greer on Monday, as did other board members, to assist with anything that needed to be done to get this cleared up. And any inference that we don't care or we're ignoring the children is absolutely ridiculous. In that building, this building, North Park Elementary, I have a daughter that teaches there. She has significant issues that could be exacerbated just like your children with the mold, if that was a question. So I'm not about to sit down and let it go.
I was asking why the rates have gone down and why.
I'm sorry.
If he had sufficient funds to fix the problem.
We have not put anything on the purse strings regarding this issue. We have not tried to say, well, we can't do that, it's going to be too expensive. None of that has been done. As far as forming committees, I think it's a good idea. But knowing the processes necessary to form committees, to get consensus that this is the people we want to answer the questions, I feel that if we had stopped to do that, we'd be sitting here now where we were a week ago Monday, with nothing done. We needed to progress, we needed to go forward with what we needed to follow the advice of the people that were best qualified to guide us. We took no control of the situation, says we know it all, we know what to do. We have listened to, we have followed their directions, we've done everything and gone beyond it. And as soon as this thing gets to a point where it's contained enough that we can take further studies and do further things, we will review it. We will be reviewing it in light of what happened here and the proposals that are coming to us from the architect as how to remediate and how to improve the ventilation systems and deal with it in a completed manner as part of the capital improvement plan. That has not been approved yet. We will be examining that, and if we need to, we'll bring other experts in to review it also, if it's beyond the scope at which we should be considering it.
I will stand in defense of Greer, Dr. Rychek. She called right away. She called when we found this. She constantly was asking and directing and constantly giving us updates as a board. It isn't something she didn't take lightly. She didn't just have no thoughts about it. She had a lot of worry about this. I'm sure she had a lot of lack of sleep because I had some really late night emails. So she has thought of it. She cares about this district. She cared about this school enough that she's been there every day, going through, talking with the teachers, asking for doors to be shut, asking to keep the air conditioners running, making sure we don't open the windows to try to keep the humidity down, directing the administrators to do so. So we are trying, and we look, and we need the teachers' help, we need everybody's help, so we're going to work this out.
Thank you, Brian.
Anything else?
Can we let Brian go home and go to sleep?
Because we expect you back early tomorrow.
Excuse me, Jeff. I believe Steve had some questions.
Yeah, I don't have the exact, you want to share it?
Answers? Is that,
Yeah.
okay. So, Mr. Minamari had asked about the contracts for HPUEA. The contract is settling at a certain dollar amount for every contractual employee. They're getting the same dollar amount. So because of that, the percentage increase is different for every employee. The people on the lower steps will receive a higher percentage than the people on the higher steps. The range for the 2018-19, the highest increase overall for somebody moving up on step is about 4%, and the lowest is less than 1%. I think that answers the question.
Linda, could you provide a percentage based on the overall? I mean, so there's a lump amount of money that's being applied.
Yeah. I can't do that now, but I can get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good number, because that shows an overall growth in the expense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on. So we're at section 9, board discussion.
We have to close public.
We did.
Did we close?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
9, board subcommittee reports. Have any subcommittees that have met?
Excuse me, just to be clear, we can't talk anymore, right?
We can until we open second public participation, which will be toward the end of the meeting. Are there any board or subcommittee reports? Nope. Okay, on to our favorite time of the year, board goals. I thought we were going to at least try to attack a couple of them. On academics, do we have that on the screen?
The last year's goals?
On the screen, I don't put a slide for that.
Oh.
Okay, in academics, we had 3 goals last year. Received semi-annual updates regarding how New York State learning standards outcomes have been integrated into instructional practice. Number 2, received timely updates on the coherency planning initiative twice this year. 3, maintain or increase the 4-year cohort graduation rate as expressed by the New York State School Report Card as compared to the 16-17 school year, and receive a timely report from the building administration on the elements that had contributed to that statistic. Is there anything you guys would like to change on these or add?
Well, the obvious one is we should update the third one to say the 17-18 comparison. The 18-19 should be based on the 17-18. Get the easy ones out of the way.
Easy one. To receive the updates on the coherency planning initiative, how are we going to change that as we rolled out critical thinking last year?
Well, the goal was to get reports on the strategic plan, and so you could continue it, because the reports would be different because our initiatives, are moving further. So that worked as a good vehicle of communicating what we're doing in strategic planning in a public forum. That certainly worked for us to help move that along.
And I think there are some similarities between that and the learning standards reports that I gave twice also, and trying to coordinate that. So I'm wondering if we want to combine and we could present together twice a year and make sure that they're both there. I think just in the interest of
And also this year, we pretty much updated the board on
The standards
all the new
haven't
learning
changed.
standards and where we are in implementing them. So I would think we would want to continue
we can just incorporate as needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe touch on also, I think, the state testing which is sort of wrapped into the whole thing. That thing's been as transparent as granite stone. We need to keep updates there as to where they're going with it, what they're changing, what they're identifying. And just as a relevancy to what we're talking about, I don't know how many people read the Poughkeepsie Journal today. I was surprised when I got home and sat down to find out that plans were announced today by one of the healthcare groups and Marist College. Their initiative is to open a physician's college in Dutchess County in the year 2022, I think was the year. Two references I'd make, one of which is the schedule they proposed compared to the one we gave you for our capital improvement plan. They're probably running at 3 times the speed. Proposals, architectural drawings, and buildings. Because they don't have SED reviews, they're doing their own reviews in their own establishment. Just as a comparison for our capital improvement plan. We would probably be getting done at the same time they had, yet we have quite a big head start, and their project is only 20 times bigger. The other thing is, the interesting thing is that the needs and where we're going with that, if you look even at the proposal, they're talking about totally turning around the way they change physicians, how they treat patients and how they are looking to achieve better results. And this is the thing that people have been beginning to talk about. As we talk about education, we're talking about providing students with the education they need to be successful in jobs we don't even know what they're going to be 10 years from now. And this is an example of that and how other industries are dealing with it. So that falls into our academic screening. We're talking about critical thinking, not can you tell me how much land is in an acre, you know. The kinds of things and approaches you take now to education is so dramatically going to be different that we need to keep up on that. And every day we pick up the paper and see that there's a new reference and a new thing to consider, and that other people are going in the same direction.
On the second one that was from last year on the Coherence Planning Initiative, are we at the point where we can ask for results of the implementation of early planning? You know,
That's kind of what I was getting at.
I mean, okay, we're planning. We were planning last year. What is that? What's the result of that planning, and what changes have been made to reflect that planning?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Then we've rolled critical thinking into all the rubrics all the way down through elementary? Or
We
where are
have
we
the
at?
rubrics as part of our Ed Leader membership, so we've had those since the beginning, but we have been working with them, and they've been integrated into lessons. So I think that would be a really great report to look
Yeah,
at.
how deep have we delved into the lesson plans to be consistent with the 4 Cs at this point, and what the future holds in that
Yeah.
area?
Great.
And also, how are we going to, the obviously other thing is, how are we going to interpret, or what we're going to interpret and teach the success and the success of the state in testing. And I think the state has always been telling us we're not doing well with their exams, but I think we need to emphasize the fact that the exams we've been given are so fundamentally weak in terms of the material they're covering, lining up with the plans that they've given the districts in terms of implementation, that we need to start trying in an understandable way for ourselves where that lineup occurs and how out of date it is, or how exactly it is in place.
So Dan, would you be able to write something down like that and then share it for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other things we want to talk about in the academics? So it's going to be rolled in somewhere into here. I'll work on that. Okay, board administration and operations. conduct a board retreat by the end of the academic year. Denise has expressed a request that we have another retreat. I haven't got it with me on what she wanted it on.
Having gone to the conference this summer, I would like a retreat with board members and administrators on diversity and equity in the workplace.
What do you guys
think?
think?
I thought that the two-day session that we went to this summer was extremely good, and there's a lot that we can learn from those presentations, and perhaps get one of those speakers to come in and talk to us, because it's well, I don't want to say it's a problem. It's something that we should be more aware of and be doing more with. So I think that would be a good topic.
Yeah, I think we'd absolutely welcome that. That would be great. I don't think in my 9 years here we've ever had one where it's the entire board and the entire admin team, and I know they'd be incredibly excited about that and very receptive, so that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a matter of arranging it.
The second was all board members will attend at least one professional development session, preferably as a group. I don't think we did that as a group last year. Or we did with the board retreat. Okay.
Right. I think it would be more maybe appropriate to include things like webinars and stuff like that would...
If I could make a suggestion there, I don't remember the thinking behind everybody having one training together. I mean, that could be good for certain technical things, but there are others, if people wanted to commit to a training, you're all on different subcommittees. So, for example, Jay sent out to the negotiating team a session, and for some of the auditing and finance people, there are some workshops. So I don't know if you want to say you're all going to go to the same one, or you want to go to one related to your subcommittee.
I think it's more realistic that not as a group.
As a group, but we're talking...
Oh, that was PD, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, Mike, I forgot that was PD and a retreat all in one, yeah.
And a group.
And a group, yeah.
The New York State School Boards Association has all kinds of webinars.
Correct.
All kinds so it would be interesting that, we would all try to take in one webinar or something.
I would, in addition to that, I'm going to make my plea again, as I do every year, for board members to attend events like the community days that the various schools, or make a commitment to go to at least one school in each half of the year. So visit 2 schools in a year. I think there's value in being in a school and seeing what they're doing, and not there to be, oh, you did that wrong, you did this, just to understand what our employees do. Be aware of what goes on in a classroom. For example, it's not hard.
Okay, Perry.
So I will say again, I don't need to go into a school building. I mean, I understand what, if it works for you, Doug, that's what you do.
It does.
That's not necessarily what I, as a board member, signed up for, okay? And that's not to say that I'm not there, that I don't go to things. I'm there, do things, but it is not something that I feel I need to be measured on. And I would vote against that as a goal. It's not, that to me is not.
I'm going to agree with you. I do agree with you. It's not, I didn't mean it as part of a measure. I think it is as part of, I do think it's part of being a board member. I think it is part of understanding your district, so that when you make financial decisions, when you make academic decisions, you have some basis of what you're talking about. We argue about this every year. I know, Perry, but so I'll just shut up. So.
Goals are measured. That's the idea of a goal. Goals are to be measured.
I just want to say that this board is very, very visible, just so that, you know, our listening audience, I run into board members all over the place, so I just don't want there to be a misnomer that you guys are absent. or
Yeah, completely.
invisible.
Please, you said physical, so can you explain physical?
That you're there in person, live
Yes.
in person.
Okay, that's better.
Sorry.
Okay, budget and administration. Create a budget to maintain as many programs as possible, given the tax cap. Any spending reductions should be distributed with equity. Focus closely on actual spending instead of projected rollover numbers. Is there anything else you want to add, or do you want to change that?
These aren't my goals, but well, they turn out to be our goals, our whole team. But I would want to, with any reductions with equity, I think you need to say where appropriate. There are some times when, if we have to reduce a budget, it's not appropriate to remove it from one area just because we're trying to be equal. There may be there may be at times, you know, something that affects students, and you know, so maybe the adults have a little bit less, and the students maintain what they have. So I would just want a little leeway, or I would recommend where appropriate, instead of locking yourself in saying, if we have to slash X percent, it's going to be X percent off everything because we're just going to do X percent off of everything. I don't think that's an educationally sound practice. So.
At the same time, we got to make sure it's, if we have to cut, we want to make sure it's cutting fairly across. So where appropriate doesn't necessarily mean fairly. So how would we change that wording?
Yeah, I personally don't think equity means uniform.
Okay.
Uniformity. I think it means equity as a part of the totality of what our district is doing.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's
under that
what I would
definition, that's...
say.
That's from the Diversity Symposium, Doug.
Okay.
Could I chime in?
I always thought it was meaning something else here, so no,
Since
that's
this is
fine.
about the budget, could I chime in?
Yep.
So I would say that equity does mean we would be providing where funds are most needed. That's an
Okay.
equitable situation.
Yeah.
I like that terminology. Yeah.
Now that we clarified what we mean by equity, it's more palatable.
So next meeting, we'll come back and we'll work on community, facilities, policy, and technology.
Okay.
And then we'll review the changes we put together for the first three. Okay. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda, 10.1 through 10.10?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I did have a question. Let me get down there. Hold it. I think it was that one. The 10.5 vendor agreement for the A&T Healthcare, 2 students, basically $82,000 apiece for a nurse's service. Are they at that 24/7? What are we getting for? I mean, no, that doesn't sound good. I mean, I don't mean to say that somebody doesn't necessarily need it. I just want to understand how we get these kind of costs,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
why do we need them?
Well, we have, a very small number of very medically fragile students in
Right.
our district, and sometimes who can attend school, special school, and sometimes can't. So we're responsible for the nursing care during all school hours. So that includes sometimes on an ambulette in the school, and then usually the parents, whether it's, through Medicaid, pay for the nursing services in the evening. So, it's certainly required of school districts. And the other piece that doesn't show up on things like this is that it's certainly what is known as a high-cost student, and there's a reimbursement rate that I can't quote because that changes all the time. So there's fairly significant reimbursement that we get from the state for these kinds of costs.
Okay.
Now, there was a little insert, Doug, that said contract cap calculation. It gave the number of hours of care and the cost per hour. I don't know how more specific we can get, except if somebody was going to list the contractors out there and how much they were charging, but I'm assuming we're putting more than in just dollar costs. We're also putting the viability and success of the organization we're dealing with, because we're talking about a significant situation of fragile students that we don't want to go lowballing on it.
No, I just wanted to understand.
I didn't convert the 100.
And I didn't understand there is state aid on this.
There's a high-cost ratio that above a certain threshold, which these students certainly are, because this isn't the only service they receive. And again, I can't say exactly I can say what that rate was 4 years ago, but.
I'm not begrudging them money, I just want to understand.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No, I was just saying, I understand. We've always questioned the amount that's coming to, and I just thought, I saw the figure, they listed the number of hours. I didn't convert those hours into school days and stuff like that, but,
Okay. All right.
I do have a question on the safety plans. Do we have to have anything for the universal pre-K program, or is that all their own self-contained?
It is by their agency, but they do have most of the same requirements, and then they participate in some of our training. So I know, that although the UPK Abilities wasn't necessarily required to have the level of safety, they coordinate with us so that they do some of the same things we do and participate in our training.
Is that something we'll add into our own safety plan so we have it?
We don't, it's not our plan to send to the state. And part of what the state says is that all of our school buildings, we need to submit these plans, and they have to be approved, so that's why you're approving them now. We also submit them electronically next month, and also to the state troopers. There is a health and safety checklist that's required with the statewide full-day universal pre-K program, so we do that as part of this self-assessment process every year, and the state has come most of the years we've had the program, so it's their own health and safety checklist.
Okay.
I'd comment that since I have not been in the past a member of the safety committee, notification we've got that this was on the agenda came on Friday. I looked at the volume of documents that we were approving and the number of pages of documents, and if I'd been up 72 hours a day from that notification till now, I still couldn't have covered reviewing all of them. So either a longer lead time or some other way of expressing myself and saying that, I will vote based on the expertise of the people who put the plan together, but I'm not attesting to the fact that I've read every one of those documents. That would be an obvious lie.
It's the template from New York State, so they all follow the same template.
There's a lot of boilerplate in there.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the consent agenda? Opposed? Okay. So we move on to new business. Can I have a motion for 11.1, special education placements?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I've reviewed the packet as presented and recommend its adoption as presented.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Can I have a motion for 11.2, the vendor agreement transportation contract with First Student?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion for 11.3, the HPUEA Memorandum of Agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just to get discussion, we had, this is listed as an MOA, which is a memorandum of agreement. The MOA will be turned and folded into the existing contract documentation, and at some further point further down the line, we will be given an actual copy of the contract to review. And the question I'd asked was, the MOA financial arrangements will take effect if it's approved tonight, and will not be affected by the fact we will not have an actual contract to put on file until some future date.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, can I have a motion for 11.4, Director of Equity and Human Resources, Terms and Conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, at this time, we'll reopen public participation. Can I have a motion to open public participation?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? This time, if you wish to readdress the board, well, you may come to the microphone.
Brian had, Melissa Walsh again. Brian had mentioned he wasn't satisfied at times with the North Park janitorial cleaning. The recommendations that he had provided, I guess, were not being followed to his liking. I would like to know what specifically they were not following. Also, what is the formal plan for addressing the mold issue moving forward? Mr. Sheldon voiced his opinion regarding the fact that the school may be doing too much. It sounds like a formal agreed-upon plan of action hasn't been created moving forward to address this issue until the capital plan has been implemented. So I'd like to know what is the specific agreed-upon plan moving forward.
Anybody else?
Jessica Patterson. First round of public participation, somebody had asked, and I didn't believe I heard it answered, was is the board and district open to having a second opinion regarding the issues at North Park from an outside company from BOCES? Secondly, there was topics touched on transparency. I can speak for myself that the public and the parents didn't know that there was a deep cleaning until after it was done. That's great that we were notified after, but there's no plan or communication prior to things being done. So if we come here, we hear about it, or we check the website, it's heard about. We have school messenger. No letter was sent home saying a deep cleaning was being done. School messenger wasn't utilized. It wasn't on the website. And only recently were these items placed on the website. So I think when we're talking transparency, it's not that it was always readily available. As far as, it's great to know that the discussions are happening between Dr. Rychek and the board, but it's not being shared as openly unless we're here. So right now, I've been here just along with you guys. It's not as easy for us when we have one or two parents with our kids in multiple sports and we're going every night of the week. If there's some way that we can come up and utilize the systems we have in place, the website, school messenger, a letter home, something of that sort, to be sharing these ideas and the plan that somebody just mentioned is going to be implemented. I know what we've talked about in the reports from Mr. Calandria, but then again, reviewing all of his reports, it raises another question as far as the things that are being used to clean. In the reports, it says soap and water, and then I think Mr. Garcia said there were 2 other chemicals being used. So which one? They're just very vague. So I guess I know he's busy. I know there's a lot of updates going on in the reports, but there's not a lot of detail. So if we're relying on the reports for the public to become informed, it's very vague. And it was also mentioned that the numbers were down, but the latest report that was posted on the website, Mr. Calandria indicated that rooms 3, 5, 16, 17, and 21 have significantly increased. That was for the September 7th site visit, and I believe it was put out today on the 13th. And just back to my question for the enrollment study, is there an expected date of when this, I know it was mentioned there was a contract of when that study will be started, when would the committee be formed? And what is I don't recall the turnaround time of what the recommendations are and what they found within that study. It's been some years since we had the HP closure. And would it cause any conflict or overlap with the capital improvement? So I guess my concern is that if this study comes back and says, listen, your enrollment's low, it's not looking to go up, we need to look at possibly closing another school. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I'm trying to be realistic here when we're talking about our numbers are consistently dropping. Is there an overlap for when the capital improvement project at North Park would start? I just don't want to see a waste of money. I understand maintaining the buildings, but how far do we have to maintain it if it's not going to be utilized for staff, students, and so forth? And that's it.
I think those were amazing questions, and I wish I could have asked them myself. I appreciate all of your respect, except two of you. I'll get the answers later, and I really thank you for putting the effort forward. I pick up my daughter.
Julianne Perry again. I'm following back up on my original question for the third time, and maybe it's because I don't understand the process. My question is, through this process, is there any way for a group of parents and a group of teachers to be involved so that transparency is presented in a non-biased format? Yes, there's information put on the website, however, you control that information. And I think it's important for you guys to have critical feedback, and that's what I'm providing. And for a parent to come here and express how they felt at the meeting, I feel is very important for all of you to know as board members, because unfortunately, like the last person just said, not many parents can make it to these meetings. And I feel like if I can be here, I can be an advocate for those parents. And I know the community, the school community, a lot of these parents are feeling this mistrust, and I necessarily don't feel that way. I just feel like it needs to be advocated for. I was not around in 2013. I'm new. My children are new to this school. When my girls enrolled last year, I had no idea that there was previous mold issues. Maybe that's something to consider going forward and notifying new parents to the school. There's a lot of things that can be done to make that trust come back, and it's not, and I just feel like in order for you to recognize that, it's important for everybody to hear. So that's, and again, I may not know the process for a committee, or I didn't even think a committee would need to be done. I would think that the superintendent would be able to include people in this process, but again, I'm not aware of that. So if you could, again, for the third time, answer that same question. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to address the board? Can I have a motion to close public participation?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Elliot, would you like to come up and share what isn't being followed for the janitorial cleaning?
Sure. I'll be careful to not speak for Mr. Calandria, but I definitely will give you my perspective as to what happened in the course of the process. So when he expressed prior dissatisfaction, I think it was really just, it's a very large building. It's about 50,000 square feet. We typically clean it with 2 people. So just sometimes giving the numbers just gives a bit of perspective. We brought in an additional 2 or 3 people to try to get ahead of the recommendations Mr. Calandria was making. We weren't able to do it fast enough, to be quite honest. As he was coming back and conducting more visual inspections, he wasn't seeing it disappear as fast as he said. You heard him say he has zero tolerance. When he sees it, he wants it gone right away. It's a lot of ground to cover, to be quite honest. There's a lot of furniture, there's a lot of material in that building, and that's why we asked them to come back, and that's why we even contracted outside services to go from 2 people that usually clean a building to have 20 people in the building. I mean, we literally multiplied our factor of attention by 10, and then spread it out over a long weekend just to get ahead of the recommendation. You can imagine how labor-intensive it is to take every book off a shelf in the library and wipe down every single piece of fixture and furniture in a room, and then multiply that by 30 classrooms, a library, a music room, and so on and so forth. So I think when he was speaking to a level of dissatisfaction, it was like, okay, I told you to clean this podium, you didn't get the underside of the top of it, you didn't get the underside of the bottom shelf, you didn't physically flip it over and do the bottom side of it. So what started out as a recommendation to clean everything, just kind of a blanket statement, wound up bringing us to a point where I asked Mr. Calandria to come in and formally train my staff. My staff are professional cleaners, but they needed to learn what he was expecting in terms of attention. And so we brought him into a room. I brought in all of the district staff that were being brought in. So again, we had 2 people there. I think we've trained somewhere in the ballpark of 10 or 12 permanent staff members that were relocated from other sites, including substitute and part-time labor, to augment this process. And we had Mr. Calandria come in. We set up a more formal training. Please show them exactly what you're expecting us to do. And he did that for us. Once he did that for us, then we were able to get a bit ahead of the curve. But knowing at that point, understanding the scope of work ahead of us, there was no way to do it in a reasonable, timely fashion. That's why we brought in all the contract labor to supplement. And then when we did that, they brought in a team of 15, including 3 supervisors, and we brought the supervisors in and said, okay, this is what we expect. And so we were able to kind of, in almost a train-the-trainer type of a format, take what we learned from Mr. Calandria and show the contractors, this is the level of care we're expecting. I know you do this professionally, but for our purposes, we need at least this level of care. And so I think that kind of explains where we are. And that's when Mr. Calandria spoke about how, at this point, he's become more satisfied with our efforts. It's because we've put a lot more into it from when we started to where we are today.
And while you're up there, Elliot, there was a question about a second opinion. And one of the things that we've explored is getting an indoor air quality specialist. That what you don't want to do is bring in a for-profit company that has no allegiance to the state education department. I called the state education department, the Department of Health, our physician, I forget who else, but I contacted several agencies to make sure that we were taking the steps that we needed to, and every single one of them said, the agency you should reach out to is your BOCES, the Safety and Health Coordinator Risk Management Team. And again, that was directly from State Ed, that was directly from the Department of Health. So we are searching right now. We reached out to some of the people in the field, specifically the mechanical people who work on these systems through our architectural and engineering firm, and we are asking if they have an indoor air quality specialist that they could recommend. We're waiting to hear back. I would also ask the board to weigh in on the second opinion and the types of second opinions are available and what constitutes a second opinion.
Do you have anything, Perry, on that?
The only recommendation I would have would be to probably reach out perhaps to another BOCES. I mean, it's, go to the Ulster BOCES, Westchester, Northern Westchester, Orange Rockland, and I mean, that's where you're going to find the qualified people that have the experience of working in a school environment. That would be my, you know, Mike O'Rourke across the river in Ulster is, you know, probably one of the best known in the area, you know, in industrial hygiene. Jack, I can't think of his last name. Yeah, down in Orange Rock, or in
Orange Ulster.
Orange Ulster. You know, probably another good industrial hygienist that could be reached.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have this conversation in public because we have heard it bantered around calling some of these for-profit companies. And I want to be clear about where we're getting a second opinion. So I've got Mike O'Rourke, and who is the other one?
Jack DeGraw is the Orange Ulster BOCES. He's one of a team at Orange Ulster.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Dutchess happens to be a relatively small BOCES, so we, you know, there isn't a big pool of people, but, you know, I think probably Mike O'Rourke is probably he's the one that I've known to be involved.
Because again, you know, I'm going to reiterate, my sources come from the Department of Health.
Yeah.
So do we have anything, a formal plan of how we're going to be monitoring the school?
As far as I've been instructed to keep doing what we're doing, we have not received any direction to slow down our efforts. Actually, as they were wrapping up the earlier conversation, Elliot and Brian went up to North Park to do another visual inspection this evening. They'll be back tomorrow morning. We're continuing to monitor the efforts. We continue to have contracted labor in the building to perform extra cleaning duties.
I think, if I could add and jump in light of the conversations we've had tonight, I think it would be good to put together a written plan, because we still have to get through the rest of this fall, and we could have another Indian summer. And to the point of transparency and getting, you know, ahead of the communication curve, I think we could put something together to say that, you know, we're going to continue, you know, and at least let people know we're going to continue as planned until further notice. Should we see another spike in weather, we're fully prepared to, you know, do another deep cleaning remediation, and that would be determined based on weather conditions, and then put together a plan for when the weather starts to turn in the spring, you know, how often, when, what are the markers, the weather markers, who's going to monitor weather a week out so that we can get ahead of that. And I think we could easily put together a framework of how to get through this year and publish that. You know, we'd like to think that, to your point too, that this dialogue does help us shape how we communicate. We went to the faculty meeting, I went to the faculty meeting at North Park, and we got a tremendous amount of suggestions from the teaching staff, you know, things that we didn't think of that would help. Some we can do, some we can't, but, you know, that was a venue where people could ask questions directly and make suggestions directly, and we recorded it, and we're following up on that. But as far as a plan to get through this year, and certainly if we don't have an expedited process, we need a summer plan as well. But I think we could put together a framework of these are the triggers of when we're going to go in, this is when we're going to start. We can certainly do that.
And just to add to that, we've purchased a number of devices for the building that are going to stay there. So there's a HEPA filter that's been purchased for every classroom, and a dehumidifier for every classroom. Those are things that we have not had in the past. They're going to stay in the building. We have no intention of taking them out. Once the heating system is energized, it helps alleviate relative humidity within the building, which should naturally reduce the potential for mold growth. And then in the spring, once the days begin that we don't need to run heat all day long, is the time that we need to start proactively addressing the humidity separate from the heating system. So it should be rather easy to formalize, but just to be clear, we're not taking any equipment out in the winter just because the weather, we're hoping the weather breaks, and it eventually will, but we're going to leave all the equipment in just as a precautionary measure, and everything will be set to automatic, so it kind of handles itself.
One thought, Elliot, while you're up there, could you address there was a question about what chemicals were being used, and the fact that chemicals were being used in place where soap and water was what Brian's original direction was, and in fact, are these chemicals soap?
They're soaps. They are they're commercial grade cleaning chemicals. They're green chemicals in the sense that they're permissible by state education in our buildings. If we use anything that's classified as a pesticide or a biocide beyond what's considered a green chemical, we need board action in terms of emergency authorizations to do that. Our cleaning companies know that. They design these chemicals specifically to target what they're intended to do, but they're just variations of soap products, yes.
We all fine? Because I have a couple things. I have written down poor communications 5 times. And so it doesn't matter what we think, if we think we're doing a good job. If somebody doesn't think we're doing a good job, we should reassess how we communicate. I mean, there are always going to be people who aren't in the loop or don't get school messenger. Community members don't get any of this stuff, by the way. As far as a parent, teacher, community member committee, well, I think it couldn't hurt. I guess I don't see how that committee is going to be able to communicate any better than what we have been doing. So I just think we should look into our communications, not saying that we're doing a bad job, but I'm just saying if there is a perception that we're not communicating, then we should find out why. Moving on to the enrollment study. First of all, the school enrollment is, it used to be like 100 every year that's gone down, down, down. I think live birth rates have stabilized. I think that's what you'll find out when you have the thing. And I don't foresee a school closing, but I think the enrollment study could show us maybe a better way to redistrict so that we can minimize class sizes. We have had a couple of spikes in this past year and this year coming. So I don't want the public to think because we're having an enrollment study that we're considering closing a school, because we're not. But I do think it could be very useful as far as attendance zones and redistricting.
I would like to say in the communication, it has been a discussion of the DLT multiple times and how to improve our communication.
Okay.
I suppose it is something we could probably ask the DLT. For you that do not know what the DLT is, there's representative parents from every school, teachers from every school, and administrators, and they meet once a month, or once every 2 months.
It toggles back and forth between the instructional and the community team.
So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's where they decide and discuss things about the district. So we may ask them to reinvestigate
Yeah.
the communication.
It's interesting, we had a feature a couple of years ago, and certainly crisis always calls for different type of communication. We had one feature a couple of years ago after we had done some series. We purchased an add-on, and it was called Reach Out to RICHAC, where people could email directly and and nobody used it. So we discontinued. But I'm not sure if, you know, I certainly don't want you to go and not have your question answered, so I think there's a couple of things. We certainly have venues for communication and discuss communication, and we certainly look at all of our ways to better communicate. And but I think what I was hearing, and again, was that for the immediate now, a way for parents to communicate and weigh in on this particular topic. Our hope was that that was what the September 4th meeting was, where we were in front of the public, and emotions were high, and for a lot of valid reasons. We didn't get maybe some of the suggestions that I think are being discussed now, that people would offer suggestions or say they wanted to get together and kind of think tank it. And again, if we were to do that, you know, it is not productive for me to be in a room if people are going to ask me answers that are scientific about the mold, and I can't answer them. So if we wanted to have, if Lynette and I wanted to host, along with a couple of board members, a couple of meetings, maybe we call them something different instead of a forum, or maybe just set one up where there's an exchange of ideas, that would be productive. But I think we would need a number of people at the table. We had, Perry was at the last community forum, so was Denise, and so was Dan. So I'd like to hear the board weigh in on this particular topic, because I've heard, you know, we definitely have the DLT, we can look at our communication, and that's something that we do on an ongoing basis. But I think the question here was for right now for this topic, and I certainly don't want to leave tonight without an answer for if the request is for this topic.
So is this topic communication, or was topic the mold issue at North Park?
Well, I think it's communication about the mold issue in North Park.
That's what I heard, yeah.
I mean, so what I see here, and I believe strongly there's been no information withheld. The timing may not have been as satisfactory as some people may have expected or would want, but we are running a school district as well. You know, there's a lot going on. And as far as the decision-making process of when deep cleaning is done, you know, those decisions are being made, you know, relatively quickly based on the circumstances that exist. There isn't time to have a forum to discuss on whether we're going to do deep cleaning. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's even a forum to report on it at that point, because it's all going to be done before you can put a forum together. So, you know, I think that we should continue to use the website. I think that we should point people toward the website. I think that's the best place for us to disseminate information, because there's, you know, some of it's documentation. It's the ability that where we can scan a document or load it up so you can see exactly what we've got. You know, maybe there's a place. If anything, you know, do we want to have a place? I know that we've got, you know, questions are being asked. I don't know that we've done a particularly great job of answering all the questions here, but they're, you know, I actually appreciate, Ms. Walsh, that you put your questions in writing, and yes. And I don't know whether we've done a really good job with that, and actually my computer died just before we started the meeting, so I don't have the benefit of looking at them to know whether we did or not. But I don't know that we need to sit here and try to do it either. I'm hoping that perhaps somebody could sit down and, you know, and put a quick You know, and maybe we start using that as a Q&A. Maybe that's the other thing we could create on the website, is as we collect, as we get more questions, let's answer the questions, and then let's put the questions and the answers up on the website, so that if somebody wants to go through and look through it to say, okay, what are they doing? What questions are being asked? Is there, what answers, what's already been asked? Because I have to admit, I feel like a lot of the questions, the questions have been asked at that forum. I'll tell you, it was very frustrating that at that forum, we answered the questions as well as we could with the information we have available, which is what I think we always do. But it obviously wasn't enough. I could tell by the emotions, I could tell by the way that people were there, it wasn't enough. I mean, we tried, I actually feel like I probably overstepped my bounds that day, and actually I reached out to the superintendent the next day to say, look, I hope I didn't, because I said, let's do the test, let's do more air testing. Let's continue to do cleaning. What can we do to do the best that we can on this? And, that's what we continue to do. And believe me, I'm not looking at stopping anything. I want the cleaning to continue. I want the testing to continue. I was an advocate for doing testing. I was pushing that we could try to do testing every day. I know that Mr. Garcia was choking because I'm probably, I'm spending all of his budget doing it. But that's what we had to do. I mean, that's what I saw we had to do to get it right.
Yeah,
And
we
for that, we continue
actually
to learn.
double-teamed. Elliot, you said we need to do more testing, and I said we needed to report the results of the test quicker. So we badgered them from both sides. And it was truly both sides, because one was on one side of the room and one was the other side, and poor Elliot was right in the middle.
So I'm open, I'm willing to talk to anybody about it and have as much conversation, and I don't think there's anybody who's trying to not communicate what they know and what they have. We can't make guarantees that everything is perfectly safe. I mean, it's not, and it never will be.
Right, and part of our responsibility is to conduct our business in front of the public. And again, we're open to suggestion and any reflection on communication. And to Doug's point, you can always do better with communication. But I also want to recap a little, because we're talking about a 4-week period of time, and we have an emergency notification system. And it is an emergency notification system. It's called School